Hi, I'm Colin from Adelaide Hills Hedges, and in today's video, we're going to be seeing if we can get this old Husqvarna 324 LD Powerhead, X-Series Powerhead running. This thing belongs to my father-in-law, and it's been sitting in a shed for a number of years. He upgraded to electric tools and said there were a couple of issues with this one. He said the choke stopped working, and he got sick of it, so he upgraded to the electronic stuff. But we're going to see if we can get this thing going. Now, I'm obviously not a professional mechanic, and if you have serious issues with your piece of equipment and you're not equipped to deal with it yourself, you should probably deal with a professional mechanic. But let me tell you something. I've broken so many of these types of tools and had to fix them on the back of a tailgate in the pouring rain and the snow back in my homeland of Canada that I think I'm at least qualified to tell you maybe how you could potentially, perhaps, if you felt like it and if the conditions were right, try to get your machine working if it has any of the issues that this one here has. So the first thing I like to do whenever I'm looking at a piece of equipment that has not been running for a long time is just kind of make a visual assessment of anything that might be wrong and just check a number of things. So starting with the trigger assembly, I want to see if it's moving. You can even see right there that the throttle's moving, and I'm just going to work my way down the engine. So the on and off switch seems to be working. Now we're going to go back to the air filter, and this is where I guarantee if this thing's been sat for a while or wasn't quite working right, there's going to be some problems here. Well, that doesn't look good, does it? In terms of looking good, I would say that that looks the opposite of good, which is bad. I'll move that into the light so you can see it. The lighting out here is a little haphazard. I'm working in another man's garage here, for God's sakes. But anyways, we can see that there is fuel, oil, residue coming out of the carburetor. This is a foam type filter. It's obviously covered in some soggy madness, so that's going to be garbage. We're going to need a new one of those. Looking into the carburetor, we can just... All right, it obviously turns over. We're hearing the right-ish noise coming out of there. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the choke and I'm going to put that in that position so I don't get anything in there while I'm working on the machine. Now let's move on to the fuel tank. Now he said he'd emptied it, which he did because there's nothing in there, and I actually took a look when he was showing me this first things first. And I reached down in there because it's awkward to do. I didn't want to do it on camera. And I pulled out the fuel filter, which looks like this. And because it was dry, I even gave it a little... to see if stuff could pass through there, and it's decent, but if I'm going to go to the trouble of trying to get this thing running, I think I'm going to get a new fuel filter, and the cost of something like this, the little air filter and a fuel filter, is pretty minimal. And if you're wondering how to get that out of there, basically you need to get something long and fish it out of there. If you have a set of really long needle nose pliers, that can get it out, but not always. So once again, I already gave the pull cord a little go, but I'm just going to check. The recoil seems to be in good shape. It's pulling back in. It looks set up right. The rope, even if we pull down to where they always get frayed, doesn't look too bad. So that's going to be okay for now. And because I'm just trying to get this thing running, I'm not going to worry about that. Okay, I've repositioned the camera because the goddamn shadow was blocking everything. But I think you get the gist of it. So now we're going to pull out the proprietary little tool that comes with a unit like this. This is commonly referred to in one form or another as a saw wrench, a scrench, I believe still calls them. This one here is for a chainsaw. It's got the flat head that you can adjust a chain with, and usually the ends of the tools that are included with the unit, which I was told this came with this unit, and I think it does because it has the proper tool here, but usually this tool here will be the appropriate size for the spark plug inside. So let's just pop the top off here. Take this off. This should just come off of here because there's no other screws. So up here on the top of the motor we have the spark plug lead there. We'll just pull that off. That came off nice and easily, and we'll check that it's in good condition. These things can bend and break in different places, and periodically they get a little corroded inside there. Can't quite see what's going on there, but I'm going to assume that that's fine because this is in pretty good condition. That may have even been replaced because it kind of looks newer than everything else in there. I don't know if you can see that, but now we're going to take the little scrench and we're going to pull off this. I think I've got it loosened off enough there that we can pull this off. And we're going to check the condition of this unit. And yeah, that looks, I mean, that doesn't look, it doesn't look terrible, but it's got goo on it. And it looks a little carbonated there. I think you can see that. It's not the worst I've seen. It's not the best I've seen. So we're going to put that over there in the pile of scrapped and forgotten parts. Next, we're going to have a look at the muffler. And these units all have a spark arrestor on them. The problem is these little guys get covered in, covered in, I believe they'd be carbonated. And holding that up to the light, I think I can see through it. Or maybe that's just the reflection coming off there. I'm going to go ahead and pull that off and see if I can get a replacement. You should have those on. Now down here in Australia, things are a lot drier than they are up in Canada. I'm going to pull this off because if I can't get a new one, I can see if at the very least I can clean the one that's on there. Ooh, look how gooey that is. This whole muffler might need a clean because that's never a good sign when you've got oil coming out of the muffler. That's not a good sign at all. In fact, I would go so far as to say it's a bad sign. Holy hockey pucks. I'm glad I could get this little screw off here. It didn't seem like... Oh, yeah. There's oily oil coming out of there. Not good. We're still going to see if we can get this started and then have a look at that. So now this particular unit is a 4-cycle of some kind, a 4-stroke, in that, and my terminology may be a little loose here, but it has its own oil reservoir. So we're going to want to check that oil. I'm going to change it anyways, but in order to change that oil, the engine needs to be hot. And if I can't get the thing running in the first place, it's not going to be worth changing the oil. It's been level for only a couple of seconds, but there's a bunch of oil in there. So I've got a brand new spark plug here. I think these replacement parts here in Australia altogether, I may have bought something else, I can't remember what was on the bill, but altogether it was about $40 Australian. There's a little trick. If your spark plug won't go in or any kind of screw, put it in the hole, turn it backwards, and then go forwards. I don't know why it works. It just does. And it's not always important to know the whys of everything. A lot of people can really get hung up on the why when they should just be happy with the okay, good enough. And I like to just get these kind of hand tight before I start pulling out the tool. The saw wrench is not the most finesse tool. And just go, don't over tighten these guys. Have a look to see where you're at. But you can strip the threads inside the motor and then you're hooped. So just get it. I just like to get it just till it feels like I could go a little further, but if I do, I could be destroying something. So let's pop that back on. Gip, 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 gip. Okay, we're not going to put the spark arrestor back on. That is on there. I'm not going to dirty up this perfectly good air filter and put it on there just for the sake of starting this damn thing. But I am going to put a new fuel filter, and the fuel filters are really cheap. And they clog up. If you're using the thing heavily, they will clog up. Or if they're sitting around with gas in them, they will clog up. I'm going to see if I can reach this in. Now that's too big. That was a stupid idea. God damn it. What do we got in the thing there? How did I get this out of there? Why is my life... there we go. That was easy. That was easy in the end, but we got there. We got there. All right, now we're going to drop that back in, and we need to make sure that it goes back inside of its hole. Now we're going to add some petrol. I did buy the premium fuel. I thought I would treat this poor old trimmer to a little bit of premium. And we're not going to put too much in there because this might be, as I say, a waste of time if I can't get it running. So I'm just going to put enough in there so that I know our little fuel filter's going to be surrounded and going to be able to suck up some of that delicious, precious fuel. You've got to use premium, dude! Dude, premium. Okay, so Husqvarna has this little guy that goes in there beforehand. Not sure what that does. Let me know in the comments if you know what that does. It's probably just a better seal for everything. Okay, so now we've got gas. We know that there's oil. I've opened up this little side of the muffler here that was covered with the spark arrestor. And I've got the new spark plug in. That's seated on there properly. Make sure that the machine is turned to the on position. And we're going to put the choke on. And then we're going to give some pumps here until we feel a little bit... there's your little fuel button on the bottom, which you should know. I can see some juice there. Hopefully we don't have a leak. But I'm going to give that a few pumps. And we're going to take a look at the fuel bubble and see... I can hear it. There it is. I can see it moving through the fuel line there. So let's do that and let's give it a go here. Oh, I heard something good there. The choke's off. Oh, 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 oh! Choke off. Ah! We'll run it with the choke for a little bit. Let things coagulate. Hear it revving up a little bit. There it is. And we'll just... might smoke a little bit. Woo! Something shot out. Safety glasses, people. Now, there's some smoke coming up, but I suspect that's because the muffler's heating up and there's oil in there. I'm going to take this outside and run it a little bit. I don't want to smoke out the shop here. As you can see, there's smoke coming out of there, which I suspect is because there's a bunch of pooled oil and residue in there. So I'm not going to run this anymore right now. Because it's late at night right now and I don't want to piss the neighbors off. I think what I'm going to do tomorrow is take off this muffler altogether and try to give it a little clean, and then we'll see what things look like after that. Alright, so last night I spent probably, I think it was about 20 or 30 minutes just having a look at this machine. I changed a couple of filters and a spark plug, and I was able to get it running. And since then I talked to my father-in-law, and he told me that it hadn't been running for about 4 to 5, maybe even 6 years. He couldn't quite remember. Fortunately, he drained the gas out of it, like I said. And yeah, with a couple of filters, I was able to get this thing going. Now what I want to do today is see if I can get this thing cleaned up, because it was quite the smoke show when I got it going. And I think the main reason for that is because there's a lot of oil and buildup inside the actual muffler, which may have been because the spark arrestor was clogged. But we're going to take that off and see if I can have a look at it, and then we'll actually be able to see inside of the engine and see what the condition's like in there, and if there's any buildup coming into the muffler, we can clean that off as well. And then I just want to do some general degreasing and cleaning on everything and make this thing look a little prettier. Nothing I'm doing in this video is anything that advanced, complicated, or earth-shattering, but hey, this thing was sitting around doing nothing. And with just the cost of my time and $40 in parts, if I can get this thing up and running again in serviceable condition, I'm going to use it, because I'm starting a business here in Australia. And if I can use this for even 6 months and save myself $700, $800 off my initial startup costs, I'll be happy. And like I said, if you've got something like this sitting around and you put a little bit of time into it, as long as it works better than it did before you started, or works at all if it didn't start beforehand, hey, you've done something good and worthwhile. So we're going to go ahead and, oh, look at that, a lucky guess. We're going to go ahead and start taking this muffler off. In most cases, it's just a couple of bolts. When I started working on still stuff, I found that the only way to really learn what you were doing was just to get at it, because the only guys that really, the small engine mechanics guys that do this that might be certified by still, the last thing they're going to want to do is help you out, because you're taking money out of their pocket and wasting their time. A lot of guys in those shops can be a little bit grumpy anyways, and it looks like I gotta take something else off. There's a little plate that sits underneath the muffler, maybe to protect it, or to keep a little bit of separation between that and the fuel tank. But let's just see that. Uh-oh. It's a little smaller than that. Something like this, if you can't get in there, you can use something to help you turn it. This will probably do the job. A little bit of leverage. There you go. People always question if we built the pyramids. Because how would you do it? Well, you know what? If you have the time, which they had the time because they weren't watching bloody reality television show. You can see there was build up there, but there's nothing actually dripping out of here. I'm thinking I probably burnt most of what was in there off. I've got this Bio Degreaser that I got from, it's just a cheap kind of store brand stuff here in Australia from a place called Super Cheap Auto. And so I'm going to clean all of this stuff with that degreaser. I'm going to give this thing a spray on the inside and out. And I just want to get that in there and let it go to work. Because there's no way to open these. These are sealed up. But when they do get pretty bad, you'll actually hear stuff rusting around in there if you get severe amounts of deposit. But you can see that's already going to start coming off there. And then I'm also going to spray the spark arrestor here. You'll notice I've got an old box on the workbench here that's just going to soak up all this liquid that I'm shooting around. It also claims to be Bio Degreaser. As long as something has green writing and says bio on it, I'll believe that it's actually good for the earth. So afterwards, I'm going to go spray this on the vegetable garden. And I'm sure that that will be good. Okay, so as you can see, these are looking a lot cleaner than they were. There's a little bit of residual dust in there, but this is not a brand new piece of equipment. I just wanted it to look nicer than it did, and I think I achieved that. Things are looking much better, and for any kind of residual, just kind of smudges from my glove, I'm probably just going to run them off under the hose. They've been degreased. I think that's fine enough. And yeah, we'll see what those look like after they dry. Truth be told, the best way to clean a lot of this stuff is to get an air compressor and use that to kind of blow all the crud out. But truth be told, I don't have an air compressor. I'm actually looking at getting an air compressor used on Facebook Marketplace. They're quite cheap. Here we are, day 3. I've got everything cleaned up to my satisfaction, and in my opinion, most of this turned out pretty good. Like, especially the main casing parts and the recoil, they turned out pretty good. I think my father-in-law, who's away for the weekend, is going to be pretty happy with the results of all this stuff. Minimal effort, and I did spend a little bit of time with a toothbrush doing some finer work. So if you got an old toothbrush, which I bet you do, you can use that for this kind of stuff. So now it's time to put this thing back, hopefully without issue and in the order that I took it apart. And that's another little tip. If you take something apart, just put it back together in the order that it came apart. So I had my parts stored in WD-40, my screws and that, just to clean them up a little bit and make sure that they go in nicely into their little holes. Now, here we are, day 3. Let's just say I put in 3 hours on this job. And it was fun. I found it relaxing and soothing. And a little heartwarming, if I'm going to be honest with you. But here we are. Here's the finished kind of Powerhead. I think it looks pretty damn good as far as I'm concerned compared to the condition that it was in beforehand. Now I want to fire this thing up and see if it blows as much smoke as it did the other day. This is a bit of a moment of truth here. Oh, that's what we want to hear. Choke it a little bit. So last night I fired the machine up and I did something stupid when I put it back together. The spark arrestor that I kind of went on about, I put it on backwards, which meant that the exhaust was kind of coming out of the muffler and curving back out, and it caused the thing to heat up. And it was a bit ugly, and there was smoke. Now the smoke was just because there was still a bunch of residue that was inside the muffler, and there was some stuff on the engine itself from the cleanup that kind of burnt up when the thing heated up. So I turned it off. And my wife came running out and said, "What are you doing?" There was smoke and it was very loud. And I went and looked at it again. And immediately I saw that I put the spark arrest on backwards. So hey, everybody makes mistakes. This one didn't cost me anything but a little bit of an angry wife. So what can you say? Now anyways, I'm done cleaning this up. I've kind of cleaned off the shaft now. The shaft is now nice and clean. And I put a little grease in the end. There are some old power heads that I'm going to test this out on maybe a little bit later, but not in this video. You should subscribe to the channel if you're interested in this kind of stuff. And trimming and trimming tools and tree pruning. I'm a certified arborist. I'm starting a business here in Adelaide, Australia, that I'm going to be making videos about, instructional videos on all kinds of stuff. If there's something that you might like to check out along those lines, please do let me know. But look, this thing has been cleaned up. I don't think my father-in-law is going to recognize this when he comes back. If this was sitting on the back of a guy's truck and he told me it was like 10 plus years old, which I think this might be, there's not a date on it. That doesn't matter. But if a guy even told me this was 6 or 7 years old, I would say that he's taking care of it pretty nicely. So from where we started to where we're at now, it's pretty good. Now I'll start this up for you, and I'm just going to leave it at an idle. I don't want to be revving the engine in here because there's just no need to at this point. I did all that this morning. There she is, purring like a kitten with a choke. No smoke coming out of there. And yeah, I always like to give it a little rotational test to hear if you notice any differences in the engine. But anyhow, that sounds pretty good to my ear. I'm not even getting a heavy smell off of that, which, considering how much smoke the thing blew when I first fired it up, is miraculous. But anyways, that's it for this piece of equipment. I'll probably do a follow-up video and do a couple of jobs around the farm here with it just to see how it goes. But I've also recently acquired this guy here. A guy just gave me when I told him I was working on tools. It's a chainsaw 2500. He says it keeps flooding when he runs it. It looks to me to be an approximation of an Echo chainsaw. It looks like it's pretty dirty. I'm going to give it a go at getting this thing started in a future video. I can see juice coming out of the muffler there. I did check the air filter, but I'm going to check the plug and all that stuff and see if I can get this running just for fun, really. And also, pertaining to this guy here, I've got a pair of seized, rusted hedge trimmer blades. It's basically the older version of this Husqvarna articulating hedge trimmer. This one's almost brand new, so it's in good shape. But it's the older version of this guy, and the blades are rusted together. I'm going to try and see if I can de-rust those and get that back in operation to use with this guy here. So anyways, if you've enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. If you have any tips or tricks for me that you'd like to share, I'm all ears. I'm never done learning. But yeah, subscribe to the channel and join me as I build my business here in Australia and probably fix and break things in equal measure. Bye-bye.